all the clusters that are considered vulnerable, that is the youth, women, persons with disability. Are they adequately represented in houses of parliament and also in government as well? Conversation we are having. Now, this has been put down in policy on the representation of special interest groups laws amendment bill 2019, but is it functional? Let's start off by welcoming Franklin Mukwanju, who's the Executive Director, Center for Multi-Democracy, just to give us the opening remarks, and then I'll introduce our guest this afternoon. Franklin, over to you. Franklin, your microphone is on mute. Yes, you're good. No. There still seems to be some sound with Franklin there. Just check your audio. See, I told you this is how we start our meetings nowadays. Can you all hear me? Not yet. There. I think you're okay. Check that again.
So just hold on.
Okay. We seem to be having a bit of sound challenges with Franklin there, but let me introduce the panelists really fast. Honorable Martin Wanyonyi is joining us live from Bungoma. He's the Bungoma MCA. Thank you so much for making time. I see Rosa Wangu, Deputy Youth Leader, NAC Kenya, is also with us. Asante sana for tuning in. I also see Miss Celestine Njagi, Advocate of the High Court of Kenya. They've developed a very high reputation lately. Thank you for joining us as well. Dr. Joseph McDonald is also here, Advocate of the High Court of Kenya as well. And Ms. Roslyn Odede, Council Member LSK and Advocate of the High Court of Kenya as well. So as we're waiting for Franklin Mukwanju, I think we should just kickstart this conversation by first, Rosa, I'll start with you because you're in active politics as we speak. When we talk of the representation of special interest groups laws amendment bill 2019, what does that mean to you as a young leader?
I think, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Rosa Wango from NAC Kenya. I think the special bill is good. It actually works. The bill is to the young people's advantage if only it is implemented. Well, we talk about the special interest group, and allow me to be very specific here because I can see women also here, so I'll give them a chance to talk about the women docket. But I'll also let me talk about the youth docket here. This bill is special to us because for a long time we have been marginalized and discriminated. So it is very categorical in terms of what the young people want and what they want the political parties to do for them. And again, the bill is also good because it seems like IBC will be the watchdog here in terms of making sure that the political parties implement this bill in terms of even in the party list, the nomination list, the implementation of representation in this in political parties. The IBC seems to be the watchdog here, but the IBC has to be a competent one for it to actually function as a watchdog. So for us as young people, I think, in my personal opinion, but also as a party position, we support this bill.
All right. Ms. Celestine, what does this bill mean to you?
First, I would like to recognize the fact that apart from the women, which is the third gender role, it also recognizes people with disability and the youth, and especially that bit where we talk about people with disabilities. This will be to a great advantage to them, especially now that they will have a say and it will be guaranteed. It is not, you can be told you will be you're included, but there is no guarantee. But when we have this bill, give a guarantee, not just to the women, but also to the people, all those who are in that bracket of the special interest groups. That is a very big, for me, I really support it. And yes, as Ms. Rosa has said, the IBC is going to have it has been given quite some job. The back will lie on them. as well as you see the back, okay, mainly now for us, the back will lie with the IEBC.
Okay. Miss Rosalind Odede, where are we dropping the ball from where you stand? Because we seem to be supporting this bill based on the two speakers who have just spoken.
Thank you, Trevor, and good afternoon, everyone. Now, this bill was expected to perform several functions. One was to enhance funding. The other was to ensure political party funding was backed on their representation, so that to promote representation of special interests, so that when you have more of them, you can have more political party funding. And it was hoped that that would then inspire political parties to include more special interest personalities in their list of candidates and in their list of nominated personality. We had hoped that this bill would give effect to Articles 27, Article 81, and Article 100 of the Constitution. Article 27 is the one that talks of 2/3 of everybody having both gender at least. Article 81 does the same. Article 100 asks Parliament to promote the representation of women, youth, people with disability, the minorities, and the marginalized. Now, when you look at the special interest groups bill, for me, it fails to deliver on what we expected because it's trying to propose that everybody who's nominated should be part of the special interest group. And that's very well, and we appreciate that. But how many nominations are there to the House of Parliament? And that's where the problem is right now. The assemblies are fine. But the problem is in the Parliament, which is the National Assembly, and in Senate, where we've been unable to achieve the 2/3 gender rule, despite going to court, despite seeking a Supreme Court interpretation, despite court orders. I mean, it's just been a nuisance. So we're hoping this would bridge the gap, but it does not, as far as I'm concerned, because let's just look at the numbers. Parliament is made up of 290 elected members, 47 women, and 12 nominated persons. That gives the House a total of 349 members. Now, if we say 47 elected are going to be women, the 12 others are going to be women special interest groups and whatever. That gives us a total of 59, I believe, 59 out of 349. You can see that does not make the 1/3. So this bill does not answer to the 2/3 gender requirement still. And we still need to push for achieving the 2/3 gender rule. The bill doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry.
Okay. We'll come back to the options that people have now, but let's bring in Dr. Joseph McDonald just to give us a brief of what you make of that bill. Is it in itself the silver bullet, and where are we dropping the ball? Dr. Joseph, just unmute your microphone, please.
Okay, I've seen it's a very, very progressive bill. I've seen it has made a total of 47 changes in 8 pieces of legislation that are already existing. And therefore, I think it gives effects to, Article 100, but also it enables us to meet certain international, conventions that we are party to. So like the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant for Economic and Social Economic Rights, and so on. And, so I think while it is not just to support what my colleague has said, but I think it's a good step, because a few cases that we've had challenging, Article 27.8, for example, on representation of 2/3 gender rule, it's progressive realization. And therefore, if we have got a bill that also reinforces it from a statutory point of view, you find that it's a step in a good direction. So I think this is also part of the progressive realization, in that we are having several pieces of legislations that are coming in to support this. So we cannot have everything at the same time. But despite its few shortcomings, I think it's a good step, because it makes changes. It makes changes to almost 8 pieces of legislation, a total of 47, creating criteria for measurement, evaluation, funding, and so on and so forth. So I'll take that any day rather than to say it does not work. I'll take that quick win immediately and then wait to fight for the other incrementals later. But I think it's a good step, I will say.
But Dr. McDonald, we seem to have been unable to reap those benefits that you're talking about. The quick wins are not being realized.
Yeah, you see, the quick wins have not been realized because of, for example, there have been several cases where, let's say like the first opinion we had in the Supreme Court, the very, very first one, whereby people were challenging about Article 8, 81, 97, and 98. And the court said it's a progressive realization. So you'll find out that, it is difficult. It requires a lot of people to change the way they think from a political party's perspectives, from cultural perspective. And that is a reality because, we are not working away from our social settings. So therefore, that is the harsh reality. But therefore, if it is supported by law, for example, if you bring your nomination list to the IBC and they've got powers to reject it, then it helps the political parties to adapt. So I think the laws, the supportive legislation is important to give impetus even for the courts when they're making the implementation. They not only have the constitution, but also there are pieces of legislations which they can say that, you're not following this. So for me, I think that is important because it gives us more ammunition to fight for these kind of inequalities.
Okay, let's bring in Honorable Wanyonyi on this. Honorable Wanyonyi, kwa ground, they always say vitu ni different. How come the youth are the majority and somehow been unable to push this through? What's going on the ground? Honorable Wanyonyi, just unmute your microphone first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I think you can hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think for me, one thing I'm happy for that I'm here. Indeed, things are different on the ground because for, I think, 2013-2017 election, we made a lot of progress in terms of the push to have the representation of the minority group, the special interest groups, that's the youth, PWDs, and women. But to be honest, 2017 election, especially for me, the person who was nominated then to represent disability between 2013 and 2017, I think those gains were reversed in the 2017 election. I can tell you, like even my own county, where I'm now elected as an MCA, and I was nominated then, it doesn't have a representation of people with disabilities in the county assembly. So I think really, while the Constitution, Article 11, really Article 10, not Article 100, all of us were happy that it's there. But I think for me, this bill, where we sit, we are happy that this bill is now trying to give meaning to that article. And that's why I think from my position as a person with disability and a person who also nominated initially, we support this bill, and we are hoping that we will be able to have it approved before the next election.
All right. Rosa, let me bring you back onto this discussion. Sometimes you just feel exacerbated when you're dealing with these things because at part 2A of this bill we're talking about says enhancing the funding of special interest groups through assured disbursements from the political parties fund. And part B says requires political parties to allocate funds disbursed from the political parties fund to election campaign activities of special interest groups through publicity and other measures. You'd think this are common sense things, but how does the cookie crumble in an actual setup? Because you're in a political party. Do they deliberately follow that through and ensure that the people we are supporting are young people? But one of the biggest concerns for young people who are aspiring for political seats has always been funding. It's clearly indicated here that they should be funded by the political party.
Allow me to talk about NA Kenya. I don't know about the other political parties and how they go about it, but also we already know that there are two big parties that are getting this funding. So I wouldn't know how they distribute funds to cater for the activities in those political parties. But in terms of youth campaigns and a candidate and a young person vying for a political seat, it is very expensive. And the expense starts at the primaries. That's where we fail. It's a do or die for young people at the party primaries. If a young person does not have money to get the party ticket, and they have made it so expensive that the guy or the person you're competing with will bribe people all the way. And this young man doesn't have, or young woman doesn't have that kind of money. So it sort of demoralizes their participation, even vying for elective seats.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell, in just a small way, that I know parties like Kenya, we have reduced some fee for them to actually be nominated or to participate in elections. So for women, youth, and people with disability, their nomination fee is dropped by half. So if it's 50,000, they pay 25,000. If it's 15,000, they pay half of that. So whatever the party sets for women, youth, and people with disability, it's half. I don't know what the other parties do. Maybe they do the same. I don't know if they implement it. I don't know, but as we implement it. But in terms of young people vying for political seats, it's a do or die for us at the party primaries. So if the mother party can assure support for this young person at the party primaries, that will be fair, then I think we'll have more young people in these seats, in the upper house, in the lower house, and also at the county assemblies.
Okay. And Honorable Wanyonyi, before you were nominated,
If I could just jump in on that,
yeah.
Excuse me.
Go ahead,
Rosalie. I just want to add on to this issue of party funding. This is not a new provision. This has been there in the Political Parties Act. And there's a requirement for each political party to spend 30% of the funds they receive on supporting and promoting women, youth, PWDs, minorities, and marginalized. We know the practice. It does not happen. In fact, women are not supported and the youth are not supported in their campaigns. They're actually ridiculed. So we need a lot more goodwill in enacting this and reaping the fruits of this, because the law has been there. There's really not much that is new here. So I just wanted to throw in that.
But Odede, at what point does goodwill and merit intercross? Because then there's also the concern that the people who are then chosen are either cronies to the political parties or simply don't have what it takes.
You can raise that, and that's a valid point as well. I mean, we see a lot of people being brought forward just because they're close to those who hold party positions, and that's a fact that I cannot argue against. But then again, the political parties have a lot of people with a lot of capacity, and that's where we are crying that these provisions are not being implemented to the letter. Because if they gave everybody equity and equality in participating in the political party nominations, actually we cry about the elections being rigged at the national elections. Elections are rigged at the party primaries because that's where real and proper candidates are knocked out by their parties in favor of cronies who we are then forced to vote for. So we need to work on political parties, their ideologies and their goodwill. And actually the political party registrar should use her powers to whip these parties into order. Political parties can be whipped into order by the registrar. She has the powers under the act.
Okay. Honorable Wanyonyi, what do the people say on the ground when you talk about young people and leadership, or even the marginalized, that is including women, PWDs? What is the perception of the people down there? Because ultimately, they are the ones who are supposed to vote. Are they ready to accept the marginalized team as leaders, or do they take what the other political godfathers say, quote unquote? Honorable Wanyonyi, you have to unmute your mic first. All right, we seem to be having a bit of challenge with Honorable Wanyonyi there. We can bring in Celestine Jagi on this. Celestine, what are the legal options then that people have going forward? Because it's as good, it's very well written on paper, but the implementation is not happening.
I believe first, we should first check the constitutions of this political party. And when you're joining a party, you should be able first to understand whether the constitution actually favors you. Because yes, there's a requirement that 30% will be issued to the women. But do you have any redress if that is not given? Because if the registrar of political parties also has to check whether the measures that are given for the women and any other person in the special interest group, whether it is enough. Because if you're just telling me there's a blanket clause on being given funding, but then that funding does not get to me, and then there's no way I can complain if that does not get to me, that has not helped. So first, we need to address the issue of the constitution of those political parties, and then whether the ORPP, that office will also check whether that constitution is in line with them, because that is the only way. That's the first place where they will get redress. Because without that, then it will just be, yes, the 30%, the 50%, the 53% being given to the major parties, and there'll just be blanket clauses with no implementation. But if there will be redress, then I believe also as a young person or a person in the special interest group, they should always check if this has not been done. Don't agree to be intimidated by the political godfathers or the main persons in that party. Raise your voice. Say what is wrong in that party. Say this is not right. Because if you don't raise your voice, out here people will not know, and then you will not get any assistance. I believe that's the before.
But Celestine, you know, first of all, even if you're going to look for redress for the 30%, you have to first know it's 30% of what? Because most political parties are not even that clear when it comes to their sources of funding. So you don't even know what amounts of money they have, where it's coming from, and who is supposed to get what. Because how then will you contest a 30% if you don't even know the principal amount?
That is where I also will bring in the fact that when I believe there's the political party funding, there's that fund. I don't know whether that amount is usually publicized, yeah? And then we all know that maybe the people who are in control will, of course, be the major parties. For example, like now it is the Jubilee and the ODM, those ones, of course, and then the party affiliates will get a certain amount. But then also there should be the requirement that a certain percentage, which should really be, I believe that should be public information, a certain percent of money should be the one that should be directed to the special interest groups. Because without that, then we will not be heading anywhere.
Dr. McDonald, do we have a way of ensuring that these benefits actually reach the people that it targets? Because we seem to be shooting in the dark here in some way or another. Either you need to have favors with the political parties, you don't know how much they're supposed to give you, you have no way of redress. How do you ensure that this actually reaches the people that deserve it? Just unmute your microphone, please.
I've seen that the bill has already tried a little bit to address that. If you look at the amendments that have been made under Section 25 of the Political Parties Act, it talks about 20% of the fund should be to special interest groups. So that means that even if the big parties have been given this money, they still have to show that at least 20% of that fund went to special interest groups. So from a legal point of view, from a point of, right now, what will happen is that the political parties will get the fund, and there was no requirement in law to try and show that they have put some money for special interest groups. And then also, if you look at the Elections Act, they have made some amendments in 3A and 3B, whereby the list will not be accepted if you don't have, to show, if you don't have, you have not shown that there is some special interest group that have been taken care of. So I think the law has really, really tried. But let me put something across, that the law is there to enable, you understand? But remember, like some of my colleagues have already stated, is that political participation really starts at the political parties level. And I don't think the political parties should be able to say that, the law does not do this, we are not able to implement the law. What are the political parties themselves doing to promote participation of the special interest groups. And therefore, I think that is where also we should put our focus, is that let's say there is no law and you believe that the special interest group should be able to participate. What are you doing as political parties? And you'll find that most of the political parties are failing on this regard, and they keep on blaming that the law is not there, the law is not being implemented. But what about yourself? So I think there are three ways in which the political parties can be able to assist and breathe life into this bill by actively participating or implementing it. Number one, we can start at the pre-election. Before before the elections, the pre-election. And Celestine Jag talked about it. We talk about party constitutions and policy documents. Do they have constitutions that promote or give credence to support of people with special interest group? In the governing structures, do we have women? Do we have youth? Do we have people with disability into it? How do we guarantee meaningful participation? So you'll find that most of the governing, let's say the Pentagon, for example, this is the highest echelon of a political party, and you can see that diversity is not there. So as much as we are waiting for the law, the parties themselves are not doing that. Do we have leagues, women's leagues, the youth league, and even if we do have them, how are they supported to be able to or funded? Then recruiting, and preparing them. Yes, we are saying that these people are not competent or whatever, but political is a process. We need to have parties that are recruiting and even preparing the leaders, because you cannot expect a youthful person who's just left the university to have the same acumen as somebody who has been in the political field for 7-8 years. And then funding and changing the nomination rules and practices. Like, my former colleague has said that the way these nominations are done, if you don't have money, so we need to change the nomination rules and practices, sure that even those people who don't have money, and all these things are within the party before even we reach to IBC and all these other bodies. Now, during the election period, I think we need funding of the candidates. There has to be special kitty set aside. This, like you said, correctly said, these parties, they collect a lot of money. They get goodwill. I saw one of the reports from, WikiLeaks that, a party got billions. How much of these billions was put aside for youth, persons with disability, and women? So they need to do that. And public education, there's some places where, women leaders or persons with disability are being shunned because the voters themselves think that these people are not worthy. The parties themselves needs to do this. And then last but not least, after the election, we need to bring out those good studies, let's say monitoring and evaluating, and see, how did our candidates who are youthful, who are women, how did they participate? Therefore, we sell that to avoid the stereotype that, we demonstrate a value proposition for women, youth, and persons with disability. So for me, I think, whereas the law is important, I think also the parties needs to do far much more. And not just try to hide behind the law and say the law is not important. What are you doing as political parties? So for me, I think the fight is not even within the law and its implementation, but it's within the political parties to breathe life into. So if they do that, then the law becomes easy to implement. But if they don't, even if you have got the very, very good laws and our political parties have not changed their ways, then it will be difficult to implement these things.
All right, let's bring in Honorable Wanyonyi on this. Wanyonyi and Dr. McDonald is bringing a very interesting aspect. From the voters' perspective, do they trust their own people to lead? Or are they still going for the godfathers? Honorable Wanyonyi, just kindly unmute your microphone first. Honorable Wanyonyi?
Hello? Yes.
Yes,
I think, Trevor, one hard truth is that I remember even myself when I wanted to seek for election 2017, the perception on the ground and in the voters' position is that special interest groups have been given their positions in the Constitution.
Okay. We seem to
when you talk about people's abilities, they have their slogans. Hello?
Yes, go
Hello,
ahead.
Trevor?
Yes, you're back
So
with
what
us
I'm
now.
saying is that while we are working on this law, but I think really we must also work on the perception of the voters. Because for me, I remember 2017, I struggled so much to really convince my own voters that I can be able to be elected. I remember it took long for me to convince them that that really I can be an MCA in my ward. So I think really the law is good that we need to have it, but we must do more in terms of changing the perception and the mindset of the current voter in our respective political environment. And I think also there's also the issue of just enhancing civic education in terms of these special interest groups. How long and how much are they participating in the current political space? Personally, I was then a member of ANC that time. And I remember even the party itself giving me a nomination, still the party leadership thought that, okay, we can nominate you. Why should you seek for this seat and yet we have a slot for nomination? If you help us and win more seats, we'll nominate you. So I think really we need to have more of the special interest groups, especially my constituents with disability, participating, actively participating in party affairs. And, and I think also the issue of just them also pushing for them also to be part of the decision-making organs of the parties.
Okay.
I think one of the panelists has talked about so many of these, the Pentagons of today, the summits. You don't see the special interest groups in those summits. Or even if they're there, they're just there for the sake of fulfilling a certain constitutional requirement.
Yeah.
They're not there because of their value in that summit or in that Pentagon. If it's a lady, if it's a woman, she's just there because the constitution requires that we need to have 2/3 gender balance in that. If it's a person with disability, you realize they're just putting their person with disability just because the law requires them. But they, what call it, the decision makers themselves within that Pentagon, they don't see that person with disability as a person of value within that particular arrangement. So I think really this law is good, but I think we need to have more in terms of having more of our groups, of our interest groups in the integral organs of decision making in the political parties. And I think really for me, Trevor, one thing I want to say is that what is happening now, we are in a constitutional mode as a country. Mm-hmm. How much are our groups also coming out to speak their mind, to take a decision, to really have a say in terms of where the country is going? So I can give you an example, Trevor. You're seeing even prior to COVID-19, we had the BBI rallies. How many PWDs were there speaking on behalf of, or rather taking position on BBI? Yeah. It was just the normal, the position that we know. So I think really we need to have many of ourselves coming out to speak on what we think is right, on what we think is supposed to be included in the, what do you call it, in this law, and also in the current constitutional amendment process that we're having as a country.
Okay. Rosa, it's one thing to try and push the representation of the special interest groups laws amendment bill 2019. It's a complete different aspect to bring in the youth to rally behind one of their own, whether it's based on merit or anything else. Because even without this special interest groups amendment laws, if the youth rally themselves behind one of their own, they're the majority, that person will still carry the day. Why do you even need legislation, which then changes the perception, like what Honorable Wanyonyi is saying, that when you see a young person, they're just being given that position because we need to fill the requirements of the Constitution, not necessarily because they are possible leaders. How do we change that mindset from the young people to realize that they can vote for PWDs, they can vote for women, they can vote for younger people, because it's an option for true actual leadership?
perception is it's a hard thing to deal with. But first, let me respond to Mr. McDonald. All that he said was about goodwill, political goodwill. If there's no political goodwill, all the things that you have laid down will not be implemented. The laws are there, political parties have them, they draft them, the constitutions, the party constitutions have all these things in place. But if the leaders in those political parties do not want to implement them, they will not implement them. But what Register of Political Parties or the ORPP has, or whatever document IBC has all these structures in place, and they look very, very nice, by the way. Only that if when it comes to implementation, if there's no will, it will not happen. But again, young people, we have come from a place where we are trying to refigure ourselves. We are trying to understand ourselves again. For a very long time, we have been told that we are not able, we are leaders of tomorrow, we need to do this, we have to do this. Young people have even gone to school. Some have gone all the way to the PhD level to become doctors. And you come back and serve and you're told you're still not ready. You get? So we are given a mindset where that you have to achieve a few things for you to be in a position to do 1, 2, 3, or for you even to vie for a position in a political party. Young people, and this is what it's progressive. We are doing it small every time. But now, when, for example, in 2017, we had young people who even rallied behind a young person. I'll give an example of Mary. We have a young MCA right now who was supported by his own. So we are coming up. We have, I don't like calling them youth because they are youthful. There has to be a difference between youth and youthful. We have young people who are in parliament and they call themselves youth. They are not youth. And we need to be very categorical with that, because we have now gone to an extent of 50-year-olds calling themselves youthful. It's a lie. So young people are between 18 and 35. And these 18 and 35 are the majority. Trevor, as you said, we are coming up and we are trying, and it's progressive, and we will head there. The other thing is that for us to support PWDs, mothers, our own, it will take some time. Remember, we don't have money. We are in a place whereby we have been told politics is about money. So if we don't even have money to vie, it becomes a problem. So we end up supporting these old guards who give us free goodies, at the end, and we end up suffering. But where we are right now is that we are learning from our mistakes, because I think some of these things are mistakes. We are learning from our mistakes, and I'm sure by 2022, we'll teach a few people some lessons, and why our numbers are huge. So, but for now, we are progressive, we are learning. And I'll give an example. Like NAC Kenya, we have invested so much in trainings, and encouraging young people to vie for seats. Remember, what discourages us is, as again, at the party primaries, where bribes, nomination, everything is stolen from us. But we are coming, and we will fight it. Now that we know where the problem is, we will fight for our space in those positions. This bill is good. It's a start. It's a start of something. We have realized in Kenya, if nothing is written down, it will not be implemented. So if we didn't have a bill that specifically looks into our interest, nothing will be implemented. So I think we support the bill. It's a good start. And because of this bill, now we know what to do, and learning from our previous mistakes, we will do better in the coming years.
Okay. Odede, what do you make of this entire debate that we're having now? Because Honorable Wanyonyi brought up something interesting, saying we're in a constitutional moment right now, speaking about the BBI. It's been touted as we're ensuring that there's adequate representation of all that are marginalized and people who are vulnerable groups. We already have that in the representation of the Special Interest Groups Laws Amendment Bill. If this was put in place, nobody would be looking for the purported representation on BBI.
Thank you, Trevor. I think we're still a long way off from achieving the what we would like to see in practice or in reality. special interest groups actually are just brought in to meet the bare minimum. Just to say that we have them on board, but they are not actively brought in. I mean, why should they be just the bare minimum? Why can't they be 50%, for instance? It's just because in practice, we do not do it because we do not believe in it. We're doing it because there's a requirement. They are not doing it because...
Honorable Wanyonyi, kindly mute your microphone. Yes,
Thank
go ahead.
you. So political parties are not engaging special interest groups because they love them, like them, or want to promote them. They are only engaging them because they have to by law. So they give them only the bare minimum. And that's where we have to start engaging from. How do we get more space through the door? How do we fight our way in? And I think the key to this lies in one, unity, and two, financing. And we need to start pushing. I mean, political parties have had to account for the money they're given. And I promise you, they all fight back returns that they spent money on special interest groups, but they do not. But do we question them? No. Why? Because political parties have no democracy. Political parties have democracy on paper, but not in actuality. When was the last real NSC for any political party that you saw? The last one I remember, men were in black, and that's what I think I remember. So there's no democracy in political parties. And that is one of our biggest challenges and problems. And therefore, for us to overcome this as women, as youth, as people living with disabilities, as minorities, we need to unite ourselves and rally around our special interests and push as a bloc, because so far we are so divided. The youth feel they're just youth and they don't want to work with the women. The women feel they're so special, they don't want to work with the minorities. And that's where we break up. And so I think we need to start uniting, working as a team, and then call on the political parties to give us the finances that are due to us by law. And you know, if you work together, I mean, if the women sneak in the back door, get their money and smile, and of course it's not sufficient, then the youth sneak, we wouldn't know who got what. But if we go in together and say, put the money on the table, budget for it, and show us where this is going, it's going to give us more impact. Once we have the money, we can promote ourselves and we can have more active participation.
But Rosaline, the thing is, the youth, for example, form 75% of the population. If they rallied behind any one of them, that person would carry the day, because then why are we blaming the political parties and trying to make it sound like they need to support the youth? They could support themselves if they just decided that this is the direction we're taking.
Trevor, you're Kenyan. There's no way I'm going to run a campaign that attracts people if I don't have money. Even if I have 80% of this country, and next door there's a rally that people are being given goodies. I'm just sitting here on my border and asking, Jameni munipe kura. Who's going to give you that vote, Trevor? Kenya, we love money. We follow money. Money wins the day. We see it all the time. We voted in crooks knowing they're crooks. Lakini wako na pesa, and it attracts us and it makes us feel good. So that's where we go wrong. We need money. So we need to unite, fight for that money from our political parties and use it to vote for ourselves as a bloc. Once we have money, we are going to overcome this, I'm certain. And we've got to get this money. The money is there. We are not even begging. We need to go for it.
Okay, Dr. McDonald, this is a whole new Pandora's box now. Rosaline says that we are Kenyan and we know we need the money. Should we just accept it as a fact that you need the money to woo the voters? Because isn't that where we go wrong? Because then it's more about how much am I going to make? How much am I investing in this rally? And therefore, when I get there, how do I make my money back plus more?
I think, you see, when we are making law or we are talking about democracy, we are talking about rule of law, all these, we are coming from a point of ideology. Ideology in the sense that we are following a certain idealism, you know, you get my point. And therefore, when for example, when I want to talk about Christianity, I can just talk about the teachings of Jesus. I cannot now say Christianity is bad because I see some pastors there doing some bad things and so on and so forth. So yes, we have got all those bad examples, but those bad examples should not be our standard for measuring what we should be actually following. So you find that the law is an important instrument in ensuring that we follow a certain ideal. Yes, even if we still have thieves and everything, but we should still have anti-corruption laws and so on. So we cannot say that we don't have anti-corruption laws because people are still stealing, you getting my point? So yes, our political parties are fallen short of certain standards, are fallen short, but it's still our role and responsibility to follow an ideal, and this ideal, we are going to fight for it, even if we get small wins. Yeah, we cannot just lose hope and say this is not going to happen. Then I would like also to mention that most of the issues that have been raised are touching on political parties and so on. But again, I've seen 9 amendments have been made into the National Gender and Equality Commission Act to give them more power in monitoring and overseeing the implementation of this. And this has also been the issue, that you have got bodies that have been said they are constitutional bodies, but do we evaluate them to see how have they performed in ensuring these things have, so we have not implemented the 2/3 gender rule, we have not done all this, and there's so many inequalities even in appointments, not only on the political front, but even public institutions. Now we have these commissions. How have they fared on? We have got the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties. Are they part and parcel of the political discourse, taking sides and so on, or are they doing their mandate? So you also think that even as we put pressure on political parties to do this, and the lawmakers and the implementation, these commissions that we are paying, who have been given the full mandate to oversee these issues, we also need to put a lot of heat on them. So because they're the only people who have been mandated to oversee. And I think this law also has taken cognizance of that fact, and it has given 9 amendments to the National Gender and Equality Commissions Act 2011 to give them more and more powers, and not only on political parties and election, but also public institutions. Because remember, this dispensation is not only on politics; it also involves the other even government, public institutions, where a lot of the implementation of things happen. And last but not least, this bill is to give effect on, Article 100. I just only have one misgiving, in the sense that we know they have given a list of who are the special interest group are. So we have women, persons with disability, then ethnic and other minorities, and marginalized communities. Whereas women, youth, persons with disabilities, and marginalized communities, we can know who they are. What about ethnic and other minorities? There's no clear definition of who these other minorities are. And I think that can be a problem, because we can have a superfluous introduction of other minorities who we don't know. Suppose somebody says LGBTI are, other minorities, and they need special representation. So we need also to define who these other minorities are, because women is pretty straightforward. Youth is straightforward, 18 to 35, whether you're a man or a woman. Persons with disability, we have a whole commission. Marginalized communities are also very, very well defined. But I still have a problem with who are these ethnic and other minorities. It is not well defined, and who are these special interest groups. So we can have a situation. And last but not least, can a previously marginalized community fail to be marginalized? What is marginalized? And I'll give you an example. The Somali community. Somali community, for a very, very long time, they have been marginalized, but now they are not. Yes, they are few, but they are not. Now, if you look at in terms of government appointments, politics, or whatever, they are no longer marginalized. So can a previously marginalized community be removed from a marginalized list, or they forever be marginalized, even though you're minority, but you're not minority? So those are things that we need to find out whether the law can advance. Otherwise, it can be difficult to go on like that.
Interesting views there. Rose, I want to come to you because you're the one who was lamenting the implementation of this bill. All factors held constant, even if this bill is, say, implemented to the latter, there's still this issue of tokenism and bribery, which is in itself illegal, but it still happens anyway. Do the young people really believe that only, and Odede is the one who raised this, who opened this Pandora's box and said that in Kenya, if you don't have the money, we are simply not going to vote for you. Is that the perception of the young people out there? Rosa. I think we seem to have lost Rosa. Yeah, Rosa, you're back with us. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think those are the mistakes I'm saying we are learning from.
Yeah.
We have been bribed so many times. We have been given tokens so many, and then not fulfilling what we promised or what they also we have this expectation. I think somebody talked about civic education.
Yeah.
This we need to give, or we need to teach young people what are the responsibilities for every elective post. An MP cannot give you jobs. I don't know if I make sense, but have responsibilities of every elective post, and maybe that will reduce the idea of tokenism. I don't refuse. You take the money, eat the money, but don't think with your stomach. Because where we are right now with this pandemic, politicians are nowhere. You call them the Amteja. You do this, the Amteja. You're the one who is sleeping hungry. Your house has been locked out. You've lost a job, and this guy is telling you, I can't help you, missing a kazi. You get, so as I say, these are the mistakes, and we are trying to correct them, and we will correct them progressively. Tokenism, and I agree with Ms. Rosalind. If you don't have money in politics sometimes, because allow me to be this person who thinks about money in terms of logistics, maybe paying IBC their dues, paying political parties their dues, and all these things. But also this idea of, I know what she's talking about in terms of ninulie chai, ninulie kitu naniacha aje. No, that kind of talk we young people have to reduce on that. But we also do it because we are hungry. These are the same people who have denied us jobs. We have nothing to feed our families with, our young families. We have no jobs, we have nothing. So don't kill us too much, or don't beat us too much when you see a young person running to an MP to give them kitu kidogo. Maybe but what advice, and let us look at the future in terms of what is the responsibility of an MP? What is his job in Parliament? What's the responsibility of the Senate? What's the responsibility of the governor in your county? I want to
Rosa, we seem to have some internet challenges with Rosa. As soon as she's back, I'll get back to her to finish her thoughts. But let's bring in Miss Celestine Jagi on this. Jagi, we were talking about this issue of tokenism and bribery and the youth, and how to... Sorry, Rosa, we seem to be having a bit of a challenge with your internet connection. Let's try connecting that again, and then we'll come back to you. Celestine, you were talking about this issue of... I'm looking at this Special Interest Groups Laws Amendment, and I have it right in front of me. It has very interesting aspects, because even 2C says that you mandate the National Gender and Equality Commission with the function of conducting and facilitating civic and voter education to sensitize the public on the right of special interest groups to participate in the electoral process. Has this been done adequately, and how best should civic voter education be carried out? Because it's one thing to talk about it on paper, and it's a completely new aspect to talk about it on the ground. Like Honorable Nyoni was saying, that then it comes out like the special interest groups are people who are just being pushed and being given positions, not that they deserve it.
Okay, Trevor, first I think we should, apart from the NGSP being given this mandate, what they've been told to ensure there is adequate civic education. We cannot, they've tried, we cannot say they've not tried, because I'm starting, when you go to the villages right now, even to the grassroots, people actually have an idea of what MPs are supposed to do, what the representatives are supposed to do. They actually know about women representatives and whatnot, and people with people with disabilities. But the problem is now accepting that these people can actually represent them. Like I think the greatest challenge that people, especially people with disabilities, have is that people without disabilities think this person is not adequate. They can't represent me. And then I also never see the people with disabilities, the organizations don't really come up to rally behind people with disabilities. The same with the women, as I will agree with my senior, Rosalind, what she was saying. Sometimes the women think they can, they're too special, they can do it by themselves. The people with disabilities, there's that break. But we should go to the grassroots, especially now. We have chiefs, we have people, the leaders at the grassroots. Let's start there. The NGC, for example, they should work hand in hand with people like the chief, because I believe the chief, most of the time you will find that they know the people in the villages and whatnot. They actually get to know that either in person, they know where they live. So when they're conducting this, they can even have those meetings, for example, at a certain location where these people, when they're told, for example, the chief has said on such a day, we will have a meeting, we'll have a training, most people will attend. Then that way, you cannot just trust a civil society that is based in Nairobi to just now go to somewhere, let's say like Turkana, they want to perform a civic education there. It will be difficult. But if they liaise with the people on the ground, the people at the grassroots, that way they will actually head somewhere. On the issue of tokenism, it is true that people, especially young people, they'll need money. First, we have said we are the biggest, we're 75% of the country. Yes, that is true. But these 75 people, do they have jobs? They have gone to school as they expected? Yes. Do they have a job? No. And this is someone saying, once I get elected, I will do this for you. So what, if you will do that for me when you're elected, what are you doing for me now? And I'm like, hapana, shika hii kitu kidogo, ya sahi, when I get to the top, nitakushughulikia. Then that person will have some hope in that person with the money. But should that be the ideal? Absolutely not. Because, for example, I'm going to give the example with the MP in Meru, that he did not have money. He had a sweater that people identified, and the people in his locality knew, oh, this is our person, he will represent us. So it doesn't really have to be about the money. It can be about something else. It can be about what does this person stand for. Yeah. And I believe we are getting there slowly by slowly. So it doesn't have to be really about the money, although the money factor always comes to play. That is, but I think slowly by slowly, we are going to get there. We're going to get there where people realize, especially people with the money, they will go there and they'll go to get richer. They'll want to recover their money. They'll want something else and they'll forget about you. And the next election, the cycle, it will be the same. So I will say the NGC now has to actually now go to the grounds and actually teach people, tell people, and also the leaders, let them stop being so selfish that they're withholding this information. And also the people, they can already see the people you elect based on the money standards, what they're doing. As Ms. Rosa was saying, the MPs and whatnot and the people that will help you in this pandemic are not doing that. And so I believe tokenism, we have to kill it. I believe it's going to die slowly. Maybe it's a slow death, but it's going to die anyway. So I think let's not bash it and say that we all need the money for them to be represented. Yeah.
I see your Dede there smiling. I mean, you're the one who opened this Pandora's box. And I was reading at part 2C of the special interest groups bill, and there was civic education is one of the biggest ones, civic vote education. Will this help to fight the perception? And also it's something Rosa also brought out, which is very interesting, that people should learn that their MPs or their representatives don't necessarily give you direct jobs. The way you go to your Mheshimiwa and say, I don't have a job, I need you to give me a job. And then if he doesn't, that is the parameter under which you measure his support and merit, if not. So what is the best way of carrying out this civic vote education without creating the perception that these are people who are just being given favors?
Thank you, Trevor, once again. Civic education is very empowering, and it's something we cannot wish away. Civic education is very key and very important. But you realize
Honorable Keter, I think that's you. Kindly mute your microphone. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Honorable Gideon Keter, nominated member of parliament representing the youth. We'll come back to you in just a bit to tell us why we've not been able to achieve these special interest groups laws. But Rosaline, you're finishing your thoughts on this. What's the best
Yes.
way of carrying out civic voter education?
So government killed civil society. Civil society was a good purveyor of civic education, but they were kind of, their wings were clamped. And government said, like for voter education, right now the law was that only IEBC could carry out civic education in terms of election and otherwise. And that's very limiting. We should allow anybody who's able to give civic education do so. The curriculum or whatever can be set by government if they so wish, but they should empower more entities to assist government to deliver on civic education. Civic education is very empowering. It will help the people know their rights, understand their obligations, and able to make clear choices. So I think civic education is something that's really, really important. It's good that NGEC is being roped in addition to IEBC to deliver on civic education now, but I think civil society should also be empowered to join in on civic education.
Joining us now is Honorable Gideon Keter. He's a nominated member of parliament representing the youth in the House. Honorable Keter, thanks for coming through. Now, before you came in, we were wondering how come we've not been able to achieve the fruits of the representation of Special Interest Groups Laws Amendment Bill 2019. What goes on in parliament that you guys have been unable to even achieve the 2/3 gender bill? Kindly unmute your microphone, Honorable Keter.
Okay, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Now, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of the forum. You've made me stop over somewhere so that I can be able to contribute to this important topic. And I have the agenda here, but due to the kind of errands I'm having today, allow me to make this presentation. And then I believe from the agenda have been given, I'll be able to answer several questions at a go as you continue. Because to what extent, I've been asked, to what extent does the proposed representation of the Special Interest Bill, Interest Group Law Amendment Bill 2019 help address the challenges facing people in Kenya? The bill seeks to implement Article 100 of the Constitution. On promotion of the representation in Parliament of the Special Interest Group, which includes the youth. The bill was passed by National Assembly, and now it is pending consideration at the Senate. And then the bill, once enacted, will enhance the representative of youth in a position through disbursement made to political parties to fund, among other things, election campaign activities of the youth. The bill also will promote the representation in Parliament and county assemblies. Additionally, the bill will enhance the capacity of youth to participate in electoral processes, both as aspirants and voters. Moreover, the bill will ensure that youth are involved in decision-making in public institutions. In the proposed bill, the panacea to most challenges facing youth, facing young people, women, and persons with disabilities in Kenya. How do we make it better? First, the bill seems to focus on only one element, which is enhancing the participation of the special interest group in elective positions. The bill also deals with special interest groups as a whole and does not specifically deals with each group, such as youth, separately. Whereas the bill shall ensure that the special interest group play a part in decision-making and influence policy, much more needs to be done to deal with challenges facing the special interest group, in particular, the youth. Challenges like unemployment, lack of access to capital to start up businesses, red tape in procurement processes, and underrepresentation in appointive position, among other, remains an obstacle. However, the bill seems to limit itself to the objects of Article 100, only which promotes the representation in Parliament. There is need for a more holistic approach to policy review to address most of the challenges facing the special interest group beyond promoting representation of the special interest group in Parliament only. The bill, however, marks one step towards a trajectory of addressing some of the challenges facing the youth. Now, on another agenda, I was asked, how should young people approach the ongoing proposal around governance reform in Kenya to their advantage? And then what should the priority be? Or should the young people defend the gains in the constitution and ask for more, if any? And what should young people ask for? The youth should come out to participate in review process by making proposals for the amendments that shall seek to address the myriad of challenges facing young people in Kenya. The proposals to reform may, however, fall within and outside the constitution and may include proposals for specific quotas in elective and appointive position to be reserved specifically to the youth. Make sector specifically policy review proposals to deal with unemployment, access to capital to start business, and eliminate the red tapes in procurement processes. And finally, I was asked, how do we build synergy with the legislators to ensure the need of young people gain traction in decision making? What support or should the political parties and civil society extend to the representatives in parliament to ensure that these goals are achieved? First of all, we need to work with the elected youth representative in parliament by participating in the legislative and oversight functions of parliament with a bias on youth-driven agenda. And then again, the youth in political parties and civil societies can assist the representative in parliament by making proposals through them to reform to be advanced in parliament and committees of the parliament. And then again, the youth in political parties and civil societies can assist their representative in parliament by acting as a link between them and the youth at the grassroots in terms of identifying the real needs for the youth. And just in another conclusion, or let me report another advancement that is going on between Parliament and registrar of political parties, whereby to cure the disadvantaged groups within political parties during political parties primaries, we are working on a bill called the Political Parties Primaries Bill. It is on a drafting stage, whereby we are trying to cure the challenges women and youth have been facing in political parties during political parties primaries, because that is where you get a ticket with your favorable political party without being antagonized that or being looked at because you are a young person or a woman or the culture differences. So we are working on how can we have a fair political parties primaries in the coming next general election as a way of trying to ensure that we have more young people and more women in parliament or in political parties that can be sponsored or can be ready for an elective position.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rosa, you're listening to Gideon Keter. Are you convinced by this lineup? Because he's in parliament right now as we speak, representing the youth. And I'll come back to ask him what his greatest achievement is that the youth can count. But Rosa, are you convinced by the presentation that Honorable Ketera just made? Kindly unmute your microphone first.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no, because I like the idea of having the political parties primaries bill. I like that because I said earlier, the challenge is always there. That's a do or die situation for young people and women and people with disabilities too. But how fast? You know, how, because we also need to learn how to negotiate in parliament so that things can move a little bit faster before 2022. So it is a good start, but I don't want to judge our young people harshly in parliament or in the upper house, in the lower house, because this is a good start. Them being there, it's a good start for us. So it's also, as I said, it's learning. We are learning and learning. But I want us to work a little bit faster, or if they could, you know, work on the bill a little bit faster so that we can benefit from it in 2022, and especially on the political parties primary bill. Because that's where either you're supported by the party And as he said, if you have your own small resources, you are assured of support from the party in terms of with that ticket, with that party certificate. If you get the party ticket, you're good to go.
Okay. Odede? I'll give you a chance to respond, Honorable Keter. Let's just hear what the other panelists think of your presentation first, and then I'll give you a chance to rebuttal. Odede?
Thank you, Trevor. I think we should say that's a quite progressive movement from the National Assembly, and that's a good report and feedback we are getting. But as we said earlier, again, it's not the absence of law that's the problem that's ailing us as Kenya. It's just the commitment of those who own the political parties, those in power. It's just that goodwill, the commitment, the dedication to these issues. And I think we need a re-engineering of everything. Because as Honorable Wanyonyi said earlier, even the electorate does not believe they can vote in a woman. I would be given the ticket and an independent would rise up and they'd give the seat to the independent. And that happens a lot of the time. So it's not that we're even begging for these primary certificates and nominations. We need an entire acceptance of the fact that we are all leaders. Youth can lead, disabled can lead, minorities can lead. And I think it's a whole engineering, and civic education, where we left it off, is probably the key to some of these challenges. But they're doing a good job, and thank you, Honorable Keter.
Celestine? Celestine, we seem to be having a bit of a challenge with your connection there. Let's bring in Dr. Joseph McDonald to react to what Honorable Keter has just presented.
It's a good presentation. The only thing I would like to maybe just weigh into is try to say that we should have a more holistic approach. I'm not completely disagreeing with that, but the thing is, you see, we had some articles in the Constitution which required more input from a legislative point of view to give them more effect. And Article 100 is one of them. So Article 100 basically falls under Chapter 7 of the Representation of the People, and it specifically talks about promotion and representation of marginalized groups. And it is not by default that this bill has made changes to 7 pieces of legislation. 5 of those are directly linked to election and representation. Why? Because Article 100 specifically talks about promotion of representation of the marginalized groups. So it cannot address issues of employment, public procurement, and all these other areas of sphere. Our assumption is that already there are other laws that deals with that. For example, if you go to the Public Procurements Act, they've got the Act for which provides 30% for youth and women. So that has already been taken care of. So this bill cannot purport to address those issues. It will only address issues that deals with representation. But apart from that, the conversation about the other bill about primaries, that is very, 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 very progressive. And I think I'd already talked about it earlier, that pre-elections, we need parties themselves to have these things in place. But if they cannot, then again, it is the law. You know, you can always be able to just come into the law. That it's unfortunate that we need to have a parties primaries bill to force the political parties to do these things. And as much as people say that the law is not working, but the law is the only recourse that somebody can have. And the reason is, if there is a problem, at least you can have a basis to go to court and challenge, rather than not to have a basis to challenge something. So I think it is important for us to have the laws, and even if they're not working 100%, but it is better than not having anything.
It's a starting point. All right. Let's bring in Celestine. Celestine, I think we're back with you now. What is your reaction to the presentation by Honorable Keter just a few minutes ago?
Okay. I think it's progressive in the part where he talks about the bill, that is the political parties bill, the primaries one. At least I believe the special interest groups are going to benefit from it if they're actually going to look into it in depth. But I also think about things like the nomination. When you're being nominated, there's a lot of fictitious things that go through that, yeah? For example, you find like in the Senate, we're supposed to have 16 women who've been nominated, but is that the case?
Yeah.
It's a slot. It should only be 16 women. So they should also look into things like that, yeah? When they're drafting this bill, they should also, so I think it's progressive and it's neither here nor there, but we need to see more. They need to do more, especially now that Kachar is representing the youth. He should really think about how can he help more people in the special interest groups to get to the parliament in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
And also it's not about just the laws. Yeah. We say, yes, we have the laws in place to ensure that people get justice, but is it the law that is the problem, or is it the people that are the problem? So we need not just political goodwill, but also Kenyans as a whole. We also need to believe in ourselves. People, especially in the special interest group, they need to also know that that is their space. They should go for it. They don't wait for political goodwill. It may never come, or if it comes, it will take maybe 50 years. Are we ready to wait for that long? So it should just be, and also the fact that even if, let's say, as you had said earlier, what if there was no law? I believe that would be chaotic. Yeah. So I believe, as McDonald has just said, we need the laws, because without that, there's no redress. Without that, there's no challenging. So this, ill things will be done and you'll have no recourse. So I believe the law is important.
Okay, Honorable Keter, it's one thing to have this legislation that we are talking about. This is the same parliament that has been unable to achieve the 2/3 gender representation. So what are the guarantees that even if this is passed, even if the political party's primary bill is passed, that it will then be implemented?
I believe lawyers in the House can understand sometimes we can make laws and some laws we can easily work with them. Some are a bit complicated. Some we have to test it, and then there's a provision of amendment and in that line. However, that does not mean that that can't be achieved. That's why we are continuing testing it. We are continuing reviewing it. We are continuing looking at it and finding a way in which how can we actually actualize this. But as one of the contributors has talked about commitment. Commitment is very key, because as a young country, we really rely on men to build our country. We are not yet in that stage where our country can now build men, because men are still building institution, which this institution needs to be independent so that it can oversight the rest of other institutions. So the commitment is the bigger problem, because I can tell you, Range and Franklin Mukwanja, when they mentored me into politics or into leadership, they remember very well when I was in URP, when one of the senior members in the party once said, if you find this young man competent, frustrate him and reduce him to idle. They can understand, they understand very well the challenges we face, especially when we meet with the elders who in the House, the commitment in the House right now, especially when the two big political parties are fighting, then we end up, the agenda of young people or the special interest group is not becoming a main issue or a main discussion. Because if you look at a house full of 349 or 50 members of parliament, and you expect them to contribute in a topic that is being discussed in 3 hours or in 30 minutes, then by the time us having a meaningful debate, we lose in a lot of, we don't have meaningful debate in our parliament. And then we have a lot of intimidation when it comes to government bills. And if those people who could follow yesterday when Honorable Milio Jambo was trying to raise a concern that we need private member bills to be also captured in or be added in the order paper. So when government bills clash with private member bills, and then when there's also difference in political parties and ideologies, then our issues, because we are few, in parliament, I'm the only one representing young people, and I have to push my bills also alongside the members of parliament who are representing different constituencies, women representatives who are actually many, who are actually, their work is to queue alongside with me, and they have to consider that they have captured all sectors. So meaningful debate, the commitment, and the goodwill because it is no longer, like one of the contributors said, it is not only the absence of law. We have laws in the country, but having individuals we can trust to actually execute these laws or implement them is a problem. We have few who have tried and we have few who haven't. So what do we need to do as citizens of our country so that we can support the government process, the legislative process? We have so many things. Someone, and I was coming in, someone was talking about civic education. Those are very important. We need goodwill from the media. Any young person like you, Trevor, now, and your team in the media industry, you play a very important role in ensuring that even if those editors are discussing few things that they need to debate or push or air in the TV, you can also consider in everything they share, they like news they share in TV. You could also push for, at least in every segment, we have something that is talking about young people, success of the young people. And you had actually asked me, what have I done, or what is it that I've worked on for the youth in Parliament in terms of bills? So far, Higher Education Loans Board is amending the Higher Education Loans Board, whereby we were a law that we couldn't work with. When young people have borrowed money from HELP, and then they are asked immediately after 1 year, you need to pay. If you fail, they charge you for penalty. That one I have amended. I have gone through the committee. I have appeared before the committee, and it is coming to the first reading anytime from now. Employment Amendment Bill. Employment Amendment Bill, I have amended it because there was a discrimination when it comes to employment in the public sector, especially when young Kenyans or when young people have been asked to provide unnecessary documents. Like, for example, if we think, if an employer think I am a criminal and they think that I need to be checked by a certain institution, let them respect certain institution to do their work. If KRA think I have not filed my returns, let KRA come for me, not my employer. So the cure, which I have presented for proposal to Parliament to be debated, is upon someone receive employment is when they can be asked by employer either to present the documents or the employer to do the background check, criminal background check of someone who is looking for an opportunity. That is one. And that one has gone through first reading. National Youth Council. National Youth Council, first of all, it was obsolete. We didn't have a youth body that is lobbying on behalf of the youth across the executive. So the council was, everybody knows the history of the council. We are trying to resuscitate it so that it can be useful and also champion the youth interest. And that one has gone to do the second reading. It is in the committee of the whole house, and the final amendments, final touches being worked on. Finally, is the central,
very briefly.
Briefly, Central Bank Amendment Bill. The digital lenders. The digital lenders, I know you know the whole story of Tala, Mshwari, these digital lenders. You know them. They have been they've been operating and they are not regulated. We don't even know the kind of interest they are actually charging this, the Kenyan citizen. It can be another pyramid scheme. So far, that I'm working on that one so that to protect the young SMEs who have been trying to run small businesses, getting money from and saving money from this individual.
Okay.
Trevor.
Yes. Very briefly.
I have finished.
Okay. Trevor. Yes. Go ahead.
Just allow me to mention one thing. His Honorable Kachar has mentioned something about the media. And I also feel that the media really plays a big part in the special interest group. We need to require the media to also back the young people, or generally people in the special interest group, because you cannot get as many votes or support if you're not visible out there. If people can't see you, and when you see, most of the time you find that, of course, the people with who've been there in politics for long, they have the money, they can rally maybe a certain station behind them. They'll get airplay, and the more visible you are, of course, the mind, whatever I see is what I can vote for. if I cannot see that person who has probably very good ideas, but I've never heard of them, they will never get anywhere amounted to anything in politics. So the media also needs to take up their role and actually do it right.
All right. Challenge accepted. But Odede, when you hear Honorable Keter speak about the line that they have to follow for private members' bill to be pushed, and then there's the big boys and the government bills also coming through, how then can this be fixed? Because we seem to be caught between a rock and a hard place, because even those who are representing us in parliament are also lamenting.
That's a hard one, because to parliament through their political parties, and to toe the party when decisions are being made, it becomes very, very difficult to challenge your party and get away. We've seen the recent de-whippings and whatever they are called that's been going on in parliament. So it's a very thin line, or a very tight rope for them to walk as members of parliament, because there's a party affiliation and the self, and then there's your representation of your people in parliament. But with that said, I think that just probably touches on government bills, government-sponsored bills, where you have to toe party line and hardline positions. But I think just looking at the record of the Parliament, 2013, 2016, 2017, and 2017 to now, I think private members' bills have had a very good good response in the House. A lot of private members have been able to bring their bills forward. They've been able to advocate for issues that we've asked them to, and a lot of progressive laws have been passed, having been pushed forward by private members. I think the problem standing now is just that when COVID came in, everything was suspended under the guise of COVID. COVID was an excuse for everything. So that when Parliament resumed their sittings, they said they were resuming just for matters of emergency and for issues that were important. And therefore, I think that is why the provision was made that we are only going to have government bills coming into the House. But I think we are moving towards a sense of getting used to the new normal. We are getting used to working in these COVID times. And I think Honorable Mealy had a point yesterday when she was saying it's time to reintroduce private members' bills into the order paper. And I don't think there's really a big problem in normal times. This is a current problem because of the COVID era.
All right. Let's bring in Honorable Martin Wanyonyi. I wonder whether you're still with us. They have been trying to reach him for a bit. And Honorable Wanyonyi, if you can hear me from where you are, how much of the political realignments bears on a member? If you've been nominated by a political party, for example, how much do you have to toe the line and not have a mindset of your own? I think we still have challenges with Honorable Martin Wanyonyi there. Rosa, you need to come in on this and speak to me about the issues that you just had Honorable Keter raise in terms of what they have to battle with to get their voice heard in the National Assembly. And we've also seen the political realignments right now as it happens. It's the same guys, just different formations.
I think the biggest challenge that young people have in parliament right now is lobbying. I don't know how the old men lobby. We have seen them lobby. I'm not saying that we should go to the bathroom and give each some money, but I am the lobbying in parliament that us young people need to learn, and we need to learn from outside before we get in. We need to learn how to lobby, because these are very good bills, by the way, that Honorable Keter is talking about, and they're very, very useful to us young people. But how, if they will pass or not, depends on how best they lobby in parliament. So that's another thing that we need to learn before we get in. And yeah, the other thing is now interests. We have this political formation right now. It's about interest. I don't know, maybe Honorable Keter will, respond to me first after this, but I know he wants to retain that seat. He would want to retain the seat he has right now. And so he may do anything to retain that seat. and I'll use him an example. I'm not saying him as in terms of him, but I'll use him because he's the young person there representing us right now. He will do anything to retain that seat, to an extent that even maybe forgetting about the youth interest and how he's going to retain that seat. So the issue of interest right now in Parliament is very, very high. These bills may not pass because of interest. The concerns right now, it's about, totally different thing. It's not about us anymore. It's about them and how they're going to survive till 2022 and after 2022. So it's our responsibility to bring them back, to slow them down and say that we still have 2 years to go and we still have Kenyans that we need to serve. So I say lobbying is a skill that we need to learn as young people. And we also need to look at this thing called interests. How do we look into the interests of it, and how are they looking into, because right now it has developed several meanings in terms of interest.
Okay. Dr. McDonald, what do you make of that lamentation by Honorable Keter, whereby he is also caught in between a rock and a hard place because they have to fight with the national government bills that are also being pushed by the so-called high and mighty, as opposed to private member bills?
I think you see some of the best legislations that we've had are private member bills, because most of those private member bills usually try to address issues that affect the common mwananchi more than the ones that have been either introduced by government or so. Because when governments or parties introduce bills, sometimes they have their own interests, or they're pushing a certain agenda. They might disguise it like they're trying to fight for the common mwananchi, but at the very, very back tail end, there is something, one or two clauses that affect the parties, or but private member bills, most of the time, they try to address issues that anybody can be able to come on board on them. It is a harsh reality, because for you even to push certain bills in Parliament, you need to lobby, to bring people, to rally people, to support you, and so on and so forth. But I think when we are giving people representation, especially the special interest groups, it will help so much into the conversation if we see tangible and well documentation of the achievements of these special groups. For example, like Gideon Ketera said that he's the one who has championed this, but maybe it is not shouted enough. So the few examples we have of youthful leaders that are out there is something that people don't want to associate with. So that bad example is what people think of youthful leaders. So I think we need to also document and shout more to know that people like Gideon Keter are the ones who are pushing these bills. And I think it is hard, but they need to show it more. Even for women, we need to really, really see good examples and documented. And maybe that's where the media comes in, to see that this has been pushed by women, so that when people are choosing, it helps so much in the civic education to say that it is a value proposition to choose a woman to be a leader. It is a value proposition to choose a person with disability. It is a value proposition to choose a youthful leader. And they can be able to do more despite all those challenges they have. They cannot lose hope. They need to shout it more and more, so that people see there's a value proposition to you too. But again, this is a political space whereby you've got majority leader. Their work is to push for certain government agenda or party agendas. But that is just the reality. But I think we should not lose hope, and we should have people like Gideon pushing more and more bills that are more helpful to the special interest groups or the common mwananchi in general. Because I think there are those bills that are yes, supportive of the special interests, but we have issues that affect the common mwananchi regardless of whether you're a woman, a man, like unemployment, for example. There are old people who don't have employment, about 36 years old, 37. They're not youthful. They are, unemployment affects whether, low income or high grade taxation, or all those issues. Sometimes they go beyond the special interest group. So I think this will be important for them to push them despite the challenges.
Okay. All right, Honorable Keter, what does it take? You know, we are speaking as outsiders. What does it take to push through a bill in Parliament? Does it matter that it is for the sake or it's for the good of the people, or is it about who is pushing that particular agenda?
It's about who is pushing, because before something appears in an order paper, the House Business Committee needs to have a meeting and agree. And the composition of House Business Committee, all of us know, they will still prioritize the party's bills before the rest. So it depends on the interest. If we don't have someone with the interest of our interest in House Business Committee, then it becomes a challenge. So goodwill needs to be built from anywhere. Pressure needs to be piled from everywhere. From wherever you are, you can do something small. You can do what you can do and ensure at least we are advancing this agenda. We might not win it today, but at least we should be making steps towards a solution. It is tough.
And also,
it is tough.
Because Rosa also posed a challenge to you. She was wondering how much of your own self-preservation interests override everything else, because are you able to go against your party position on a matter per se, even though you know they may not be right, but they're pushing a certain agenda? Are you able to go against that, for having seen the de-whipping left, right, and center that's going on? In fact, Honorable Junet Mohammed, who's been there longer than you, was very categorical when he told Edan Duale that when you see us following Baba like cows, it's because we are scared of the things that are happening to you.
Yes, personally, I'm not scared, because it depends with where you come from and where you want to go. For me, I have been in the youth space for a long time. I'm a subject matter expert when it comes to youth issues, from all the way from university to youth league, and I'm a product of championing youth interest. So here in Parliament at the same time, I will not shy away. Definitely, when we are asked to differ, does not mean disrespect. I can differ with my party. In a way, they will understand that I'm thinking differently on this issue. You know, like how my sister put it. It seemed like we need to really fight. We don't have to fight. There's a way in which we can differ, but differ honorably. I will differ with my party leader, explaining, especially, for example, when I was trying to convince the entire House to allow youth to come and sit in Parliament for the first time in history. That enabled our president to be given an award as a UN Youth Envoy Champion. It was not something that was easy. Nobody has ever brought young people to Parliament to sit where their members of Parliament are sitting. They've been, you could hear the kind of discussion they were having. But I was able to make them understand, lobby, and they allowed. And the resolution that came out of that meeting that young people had in Parliament, till to date, I did table to the speaker, and the actions and details that the young people raised have been captured in most of the bills. Meaning, there is another way. That's why even when you're asking for jobs, you need job experience. So sometimes you need experience when it comes to lobby. Even if you are not aware of something, you can use skills, you can inquire, you can ask someone senior, how do I go about this? So mentorship does not end here. It needs to be, it is something that, it is a skill. If you don't know something, you can ask. If you want to differ, you can differ in which way. That is the same thing we always need to do, even when you're outside. The only problem we normally have is you find young people normally think, if I have to differ with a certain CS, I have to go and throw a stone. It doesn't work all the time. It doesn't work. It's different leadership styles. We need to find a way in which, if we need to lobby, we need to lobby in a manner in which we can, all of us, respect each other, and we can be respected. We don't need to lobby in a way that we can't be respected at the end of the lobby. So those are the small skills we can remind ourselves in the youth sector, yes?
Yes, there's a direct question here from one of our participants, Lilian Anyango. She says, ask Honorable Keteri's sentiments on the assumption out here that young people are doing nothing in Parliament. In fact, they are only used as stooges to fight for interests of specific individuals.
That is not true. Because, you know, when you have removed your shirt and you have jumped into the arena and you are sweating. We are sweating. We are lobbying. We are doing what we can do. We are trying to maintain the respect in the youth sector. And the difference between us and those people who can use to complain is easy. I challenge young people to show up to the arena, fight honorably. Do not fight in shamefully. Fight to win. And fighting to win, you need to know how to win. So if wherever she is or wherever they are, they need to. That's why in my recommendation, I have asked them to be a bridge between the representative of members of parliament and the youth. When they have a meeting with members of parliament, wherever they are, let them not discuss about give us 50 shillings or give us what. Let them discuss about an issue. I have sat with members of parliament and I can tell you, every member of parliament is always thinking, what is missing so that I can be able to help. That's they've been asking all the time. And they're very receptive. I can testify on behalf of them that when I asked them to sponsor 2 youth from every constituency, they did it. And they were very happy. And almost 90% asked me, can you share with me the resolutions of the youth when they came to parliament? And I did. Yeah. So meaning, as I have been telling you, Trevor, or when we meet in different forums, as young people, we are segmented into several sectors or several kind of characteristics. There are those young people who complain just because they complain. There are those young people who are insiders and they are looking for answers. There are young people who understand that our country behaves like what. And there are those who even don't know. And there are those who want to throw a stone all the time. Even if they see me, they are rioting. They are like, nyinyi tu muko, you know. So, but in our society, we need to understand all these sections. And then we need to find a way in which we are going to reduce the social contradiction between us, between ourselves, young people or the special interest group. We have several.
All right.
Because you find many groups, many youth organizations masquerading in terms of youth, and they are just taking up a lot of space and are wasting us. They meet in boardrooms and then there's no resolutions. They don't push for anything. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
I never like to end a discussion without looking for solutions, and we're running out of time here. So I'll start with Dr. Joseph McDonald. Where do we go from here now as your final remarks?
For me, I think I had several things that need to be addressed. One, I've raised concerns about, who are these other minority groups, ethnic and minority groups. We need to be clear on that so that we don't have other superfluous, groups that are coming left, right, and center. Number two, even within the same groups, there can still be marginalization. You get my point? So for example, we have the marginalized communities. There are so many marginalized communities, the OGX, and so on and so forth. They're not represented. So every time we talk about a marginalized community, there's only 1 or 2 that appear in that marginalized communities. So we think, again, we need to ensure, even as we address these issues, we don't overgeneralize so much. Even the representation of women. I know women are all the same, but for sure, I don't think that if we have people from only urban or elite women, a true representation of, let's say, somebody who is drawing water from, a rural area, do they get proper representation? Then to address the issue of Keter saying that, as much as we are choosing these people, we're not just choosing them to meet our constitutional threshold. We think that their participation can drive a certain agenda. Now, Honorable Ketera said that the business house committees are the most influential. We need to also add then a provision in this bill to make it mandatory for the House Business Committee to also include these groups. There should be a member of the youth, women, and persons with disability in this committee, so that to ensure that the issues that are brought in Parliament are not only about partisan party or government bills. They are also, or even if they are government bills, the needs of these marginalized committees are represented. And last but not least, I think I'd already talked about this, the political parties themselves needs to do things at a pre-election level, election period level, and post-election level to ensure that if they're not just doing it for the sake of the law to meet a criteria, but they're actually doing something from within themselves, internal party democracies, to make sure these things come into fruition. And the bodies that are charged, like the National Gender Commission and Equality, also give us value for money for all the salaries we give them, in the sense that they need to, put all these people into task, and measure, bring us reports, so that again we as people have a basis of showing whether to know whether things have been implemented or not been implemented. Otherwise, I support the bill. It's a low-hanging fruit that I'll take any day, because everything, you don't build a nation once. I mean, there's no quick fix. Everything is just small, incremental, and this is a good starting point into the realization of all people that are being represented. Thank you.
All right. Celestine, your closing remarks on this? No, Celestine, reconnect again. No, your sound is a bit low. Celestine, as you're still fixing your sound, let's bring in Rosa. Rosa Wangu, what is your final remarks on this conversation? Where do we go from here?
Okay, so I have 3 points. One, I would encourage that the political parties relook at their governing bodies so that they include women, youth, and persons with disability. If they're not there, their interests will never be looked at. So I would request that political parties relook at their governing bodies. The second point is that we need to have a properly constituted IBC. If this bill passes, the person who will actually make sure that it's well implemented, apart from the political parties, it's IBC. So if we don't have a well-constituted IBC, we will not achieve what we want. And last point is that I'm making a proposal here that we devolve Article 55.
Okay.
We need to have government.
Okay. Rosa, we also seem to be having a bit of a
Explain
challenge
to us about interest.
Yeah. It seems to be having a bit of a challenge there with your audio
am I
as
back?
well. You're winding up? Yes.
Yes.
Briefly.
So I would request that we devolve Article 55 so that our interests are looked at in the counties. My last point is, yes, we support the bill, but it needs to be strengthened with this proper commission so that it actually benefits the special interest groups.
Okay. Rosaline, your final remarks?
Thank you, Trevor, and thank you, everyone. Before I forget, let me say thank you to Center for Multi-Party Democracy and all my co-panelists. It's been a beautiful afternoon. And thank you, Trevor, for being a good host. 2 things probably, because a lot has been said. One, this draft bill that we have that has been passed in the National Assembly and is seated before the Senate for approval, it would have been nice if we had a standalone bill or law addressing special interests, because what this bill actually does is piecemeal amendments of several pieces of legislation. So what this means is that for Wanjiko to find where the law touching on her is, she has to look for the IBC Act, she has to look for the Political Parties Act, she has to go and look for GEC Act. I mean, really, it would make so much sense if somebody in Parliament could sit and draft a special interest group law in itself, a standalone law, so that we have one reference point if I want to look at my rights and I want to look at my liberations in that document. And that would be really progressive as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, this bill, as I said in the beginning, does not address the 2/3 gender principle. And we still need to make an amendment to Article 98 to import the wording that we have in Article 177 so that we can balance the 2/3 gender rule. We've been talking about this. I know somebody at the beginning said it's progressive. The years they were given to achieve this progressive achievement has expired. We have fought, there's just no goodwill, and we need to actually, maybe Honorable Keter can help us lobby and amend Article 98 to import the wording that we have in Article 177 so that we achieve the 2/3 gender rule. None of these amendments will achieve it for us.
All right.
Thank you.
Honorable, I wonder whether we have Celestine Njagi. Are you back, Celestine?
Yes, I
Let's
am.
try your sound again. Yes. Yes, your final remarks very briefly.
I have two.
Yeah.
First, I'd just like to thank the CMD. Thank you, Trevor. You've been a wonderful host and also the co-panel. Now, my recommendation. One that I've already seen on a talking about the party primaries. I believe that most people in the special interest group face the biggest challenge during the nomination. So I believe it's about time that they fast track the process so that people are able to actually benefit from the recommendations that they will make to ensure that the bullying and the bribery actually on a law is actually handled properly.
Yeah.
The second one shall be let's not cut the slack for especially the parliament. The truth that gender rule must be. We hope that this bill passed actually see the light of the day and actually become enacted into law. Let's not cut them the slack, and we make sure that the truth that gender rule is actually observed, not just for the parliament but also for appointive positions, especially like now the cabinet, the executive must also follow suit. Let's ensure that must keep on pushing for that to actually happen. That's all.
Okay. Honorable Keter, finally.
Finally.
Yes.
Thank you. Even me, I was about to leave now. What we need to do, let's continue with these conversations. Let us lobby from wherever we are. Let members of parliament, wherever they are, when you meet them, feel the pressure, the need, the importance, that you value it. Then as we continue doing that, then we are going to at least start a conversation even within parliament, that this thing, the public interest, there's nothing that we are in parliament to look into the interest of the people. And if the people want it and want it so bad, then things will change. Even the president himself will see. Because even you see last time, when the president tried to assist in the process, then we didn't get the numbers, the quorum. The threshold was so high, the 2/3 and all those things. So the will is there, but how? And how does not mean only members of parliament can, but it's all of us. So let's continue with the same discussions. Soon we'll get an answer.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time to speak about the representation of special interest groups laws amendment bill 2019. And thank you so much for everyone who tuned in online on Facebook. We are streaming live. Honorable Gideon Keter, nominated member of parliament representing the youth. Asante sana. Honorable Martin Wanyonyi, Bungoma MCA, also joined us earlier on. Thank you so much. Ms. Roslyn Odede, council member LSK and advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Asante sana for making time. Ms. Rosa Wangu, Deputy Youth Leader, NAC Kenya. Thank you also for tuning in. Ms. Celestine Jagi, Advocate of the High Court of Kenya, Asante sana. And Dr. Joseph McDonald, Advocate of the High Court of Kenya as well, and a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Thank you so much for taking time to speak about this conversation. We'll still talking about it. You've challenged the media to have this conversation more often. I can assure you we will try. I may be outranked, but I will do my best to make sure that happens. Before I bring in Franklin Mkwanja, the Executive Director, CMD, to give a vote of thanks, there's quite a number of feedbacks that are coming through here. Jesse Saruni says, I further encourage the representatives of the marginalized groups to push for economic empowerment of their members. Without economic empowerment, the marginalized groups will always be manipulated to serve the interest of other individuals or organizations. And we also have another one here from Hector Grain, who says, Honorable Keter cannot just say that the youths will discuss agendas with their political members without asking for money. Trying to access a political member without having an agenda that will help them clinch on to their seat is shooting yourself in the foot. Members only support bills that are self-serving them only to seem helpful. Look at the previous bills that were passed. How many are serving only to them rather than the public? All right, Elizabeth Michael says this whole thing needs to be reanalyzed on the sensitive parts that still remains. Thank you so much for the feedback. There's a lot of it. I'm trying to squeeze them in before we run out of time here. There was also a direct question from William Kimathi to Rosa Wangu saying that ask NAC Kenya Representative Honorable Wangu if they have specific seats for youth or specific interest groups. I think she had answered that earlier on. And BM says, when it comes to special interest groups, where do refugees or LGBTQI and persons living with HIV, also maligned, where do they fit in? All right. Those are the concerns that you're raising
Yes, can you hear me?
Franklin, I hear you.
Great. Thank you very much, panelists and Trevor, for really an insightful discussion. I didn't find any need to disrupt the flow as much as I had challenges earlier joining, but the conversation has really gone on well, and I want to thank the panelists and the participants that have also weighed in with very, very good comments and discussions. One of the things that we observe as the Center for Multi-Party Democracy is that this piece of legislation coming almost a decade after the new constitution is something long overdue, and I hear the panelists across board participants' comments finding it a very useful piece of legislation that I think the Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee of the National Assembly has done well to bring it for discussion, and hopefully it can be concluded and out there for actualization soon to improve our multi-party democratic practice and also our quality of representation across board. I hear Advocate Rosalino Dede speak about the two-thirds gender rule. I think this is something else that we really need to work on. My brief comment about it is that it's very difficult to find gender equality, particularly in political representation, where you have a country like ours that is very much deeply divided or organized along ethnic lines in terms of political mobilization, and also has embraced first past the post as the choice of electoral system. So, Rosalind, I think we need to have a real conversation around such an issue and see what is the effect of the choice of electoral system and the struggle that we have with the two-third gender rule. Again, the ideas of consolidating the pieces of legislation around political parties and elections is something useful that we need to look at. Finally, I want just to make some observations as we close. I think as Kenyans, we generally have aspirations for deliberative democracy, or what some scholars would call representative, inclusive democracy. But as we theorize this deliberative democracy, have we sufficiently attended to the ways that processes of debate and decision-making often marginalize individuals and groups, not only because of their lesser social and economic power, but also because of the norms of political discussion that are really biased against some forms of, expression. We have to have this deeper conversation. I say so because this bill goes down to addressing these issues. And in any case, inclusive democracy involves more than the formal equality of all individuals and groups to enter the political process. It entails taking special measures to compensate for social and economic inequalities of unjust social structures. And these are the issues that I have had Rosa Wangu and my good friend Honorable Keter, bringing to the fore. It's the same issue that Dr. MacDonald again raised, that, women, the urban elite women may not necessarily be representing the mamambogas across board. So such special measures may require forms of group representation in order that the particular social perspectives of group members against voices. If we don't do that, then we will not be, responding to the globalized way of practicing inclusive democracy. This bill, I think, from where I sit at the Center for Multi-Party Democracy, is really some of the progressive pieces of legislative proposals that need to be supported, need to be critiqued by all and sundry, made better on the floor of the House by some of the suggestions. I hope that Honorable Keter, who was holding fort for Parliament this afternoon on this conversation, has, in his own way, captured some of the ideas that are coming through from very good thoughts by the panelists and the comments by the audience. So thank you very much, participants, and thank you very much, panelists, and Trevor, for always navigating our conversations pretty well, and have a dialogue focused afternoon on this Friday. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and have a very, very restful weekend. Asante.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Trevor.
All right. God bless.
Nice weekend, everyone.
You too. Nice weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye from my dark hiding.